Welcome back, learners. This is week 4 of our course, which is about health and safety. My name is Michael Tost. You've seen and heard from me already before. I'm the coordinator of the SUMEX project and also the lead person this week, the Health and Safety Week. And it is my pleasure to be joined today for 2 people from with 2 different, very different viewpoints. We will see, or maybe not different viewpoints. Sophie Grenade and Alexander Zanov, who will introduce themselves in just for a second, and then we'll have a conversation, a discussion about health and safety aspects. So, Sophie, can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, of course, and good morning, everyone. So my name is Sophie Grenade. I'm a senior policy advisor in industriAll Europe. So maybe a few words about my organization. We are a trade union federation, a European trade union federation covering different sectors. This means that we represent the workers in different sectors, the energy-intensive sectors such as metal, paper, chemical sector, but also the textile sector. And of course, we represent also the extractive industries workers. So we represent around 7 million workers and all the national trade union federation working in those sectors. So that's why I'm very pleased to be here today to explain a bit what we are doing regarding health and safety. Yeah, looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Sophie. And Alexander?
Good morning. My name is Alexander Zanov. I am safety manager in Dundee Precious Metals, Bulgaria. I am responsible for both operations in Bulgaria in Chelopech. It's underground copper and gold mine, and in Krumovgrad, it's open pit gold mine. Me and my department also provide support to other DPM locations in Serbia and Ecuador. I'm working for Dundee almost 14 years in this department. So that's all.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Alexander. Pleasure to have you here, as I already said before. Let's get started. Let's dive into the subject of health and safety in the extractive industries. I guess my first question to both of you is, the sector has actually in recent years done a fair bit and invested a lot with regards to health and safety in order to improve its performance. Can you maybe give us some examples? And I would like to start with Alexander this time around, where we stand, what Dundee Precious Metals has done, and whether or not you think we've already done enough sort of with this status with regards to health and safety.
Okay, the first important thing that Dundee done when came in Bulgaria is to change the mining method from sub-level caving to open pit mining. That is more safe than the other. The second thing is to change all the equipment. Now we don't have miners, we have operators. They are working in closed cabins with air conditioner. They are not exposure to the environment in the mine or dust or temperature, whatever. The other thing is the safety system. We had a lot new the good practices implemented. The main aim of this is to involve everyone in the process of improving safety. These procedures take 5-point or incident reporting, ICAM investigations. We have a set of golden rules implemented in our size. We developed them based on the main risk in mining industry. And if some from our employee or external contractor don't follow the the consequences are very, very hard for them. This is with a few words.
Thank you. Where does that actually leave you now? Do you still have severe accidents? Do you still see minor accidents? Do you still see occupational illnesses?
Occupational illnesses, no. In April this year, we achieved 2 years without LTI in our operation in Liège.
LTI means lost time injury?
Correct.
Okay, very good.
And at the end of September, we achieved more than 5.7 million hours in our operations in Bulgaria without LTI.
Okay, we'll come back to that, what that actually means in just a second. Sophie, your view on what the industry has done. What do you think, where things stand at the moment?
Yes, thank you for the question and also for the very helpful example from Alexander. I would like to say, maybe make an intervention on two aspects. First, I would like maybe to recall where do we stand regarding health and safety in a more broader way. This is not a very concrete example, but I just want to explain that, and then I will maybe give you some more concrete example. First, that's true that we have made a lot of efforts regarding health and safety in mind. Probably it's a sector who is working the most on this question. So that's very important to mention. We see lots of effort on different level, European level, member state level, but also company level. We see lots of things happening, and that's very important to say. But we have also to say that there is still problems. That's important to mention in a very broader way. I'm not just talking about extractive industry, but that's important to recall that the fatal accident at work are declining. This is true, but there is more and more occupational disease which are increasing a lot these last years. Just as an example, 100,000 workers die every year for occupational cancer due to exposure to hazardous substances. So that's also very much important to mention, I think. So this also means that we still continue to work on this important topic. Wanted also to mention that psychological pressure and long working hours are also causing lots of new problems, if I may say, like heart disease, depression, and suicide. All the bad posture and heavy lifting cause also musculoskeletal disorders. These are the main problems that the work places are facing now regarding health and safety. And in extractive industries, of course, lots of effort. I already say that, but this is also the case. We also see some remaining problems. For example, wanted to mention in April 2022, 10 workers died in Poland, 8 in Serbia, and there is still lots of respiratory system disease, musculoskeletal disorders. So that's probably mining is the sector with the most work-related problem, if I may say. This is linked to the work itself, and we, as I said earlier, we think that lots of effort are doing in order to try to tackle all this problem. But as trade union, you may also understand that for us, we think we can do more to also try to achieve a zero accidents, zero disease. This is easy to say because we should do more, but who is the we? And for us, of course, this is for industrial Europe. The European level can do a lot with legislation regarding exposure limits for workers, as an example. Member state and national legislation are also very much important. But the company level is also very much important regarding their investment in techniques, in training, in plan to help on health and safety, etc. This is very much important. But in the companies, this is not just the employers. The trade unions have also a role to play to achieve this zero harm, if I may say, and a zero vision approach. We think that is the the most important thing to mention. We think that we are going to achieve better achievement regarding health and safety if the trade unions are involved in the anticipation plan, in the training programs, in identifying also the problems. This is very much important. And for that, we have some examples. I don't know if I still have a bit of time to share with you two examples of social dialogue in extractive industries. First, the NEPC program, which is about the respirable silica. We have that a very much important work with employers, trade union employers on the EU level, trying to tackle this problem, because you know silicose is still a huge problem in mining. And there we have a European legislation with some exposure limit, but we think that having just exposure limit will not help on the ground, because we also need good practices. We need training for companies and for workers, etc. So we are working very well with employers' organization on the EU level to try to have some concrete implementation of this exposure limit, if I may say. I think this is a very good example, and I can share after with colleagues the different information regarding that. Very shortly, another good example of social dialogue, Germany. There, all employers are obliged to be member of a professional organization. This is also the case for extractive industries and mining. And this organization, this professional organization, is getting fees for every employer in proportion to the numbers of employees at risk in their branch or at the work site. And the more the employers are doing to reduce the harm, the less they have to pay. So that's also maybe a good practices. And there, in this organizational, professional organization, trade unions are sitting in the board of this professional organization with 50% of seats. So this is an area, a space in which they can discuss about the main problems and how they can tackle this problem. So yeah, that was the thing I wanted to mention first.
Thank you very much, Sophie. I guess both of you touched on a couple of things that during this week in the course we already discussed with the learners. AE, you touched on some intrinsic risks that are sort of present in the mining industry. Alexander spoke of moving away from underground mining towards open pit mining, which in itself reduces risk if you're not working underground. And Sophie, you touched based on some of these unfortunate fatalities that we've seen here in Europe just recently. Poland, that was underground mining as well, a couple of weeks or months ago, where we've seen that. So these intrinsic risks we've touched base upon that we need to work on and continue working on, indeed. Then you also talked about sort of more generic risks, and Alexander touched base on equipment technology, that you did a lot of updates. Sophie, you touched base on exposure to dust, musculoskeletal disorders that we still see, which result obviously from manual work still being done. So when you move away from those manual tasks and use equipment instead, and you go from a sort of worker towards an operator of a machine that sits in a cabin and doesn't, he or she himself handle the heavy lifting, etc., but the machine does the heavy lifting, then that will obviously help. And then you both touched on sort of that third element that we discussed as well, which is this element of management and culture that you touched upon, where the workers need to be included in this element as well. And for sure the union, if it is a unionized site, has a role to play in that as well, in order to establish a culture where health and safety plays a strong and dominant role. So from this status of where we are, Sophie, you already touched upon where we want to be. Obviously, we want to come towards a state of zero harm, where nobody, well, nobody goes to work and nobody gets paid for their working efforts in order to get injured. So everybody should come home each day without any harm done to them caused of their work, and that should actually happen throughout the lifetime, basically, so that you don't get long-term harm done to your body or to your you already mentioned the physical and the psychological aspects as well. Nobody should get harmed by their workplace through the work that they are doing. Is it actually even possible in an industry like the extractive industries, with its intrinsic hazards that we already discussed and touched upon, to get to that state of zero harm? What do you both actually think about that, and what else needs to happen in order to get to that? And again, want to start with Alexander. I mean, you mentioned some of your LTI figures and the lost time injuries, and that you haven't seen any severe injuries expressed through that indicator, at least in recent times. So what's your take on this? Are you on a good way? Have you achieved it already? What else needs to be done?
Yes, I think that zero harm is achievable. We already achieved one big period without injuries, and of course with a lot of efforts of everyone. The safety is a process that never ends, and we are trying each year to have a different campaigns that will involve not only our employees but also their families. We are trying to do every year something different to keep the focus on safety with our employees, also at management. As example, we involve families to take movies about the safety, and after that we're showing this movie in front of our employees. We have a healthy campaign like bicycle riding in the mountains or hiking somewhere with our employees and their families. We are trying to not only to focus on safety in our working places, but also outside the company, and to change the behavior of our employees to be safe at work and also at home.
Okay, so it's really sort of behavioral change and making safety health something that is not sort of switched on when you get to work, but it's really something that is supposed to become a value of people, so that they indeed value it and include families, etc. as well. Out of curiosity, Alexander, is your side, or are your sides unionized?
Yes, we are working very close with unions, not only on a site level, but on the national level. Before 2 weeks, union leaders, Bulgarian union leaders was on visit in our site. They visit the underground, after that the surface process plant, to see the condition and how we work with unions on a site level.
Mm-hmm. And so you would say, with regards to health and safety, your relationship with the union in your case is a collaborative one. It's not a confrontational one or anything, but you are working in the right or in the same direction.
Yep, the unions on a site level, we collaborate very often with them. They are, I can say that they are part of our safety department.
Thank you. Sophie, your take on this, zero harm, you mentioned it already before, and the unions to be part of that journey. I think in this case, we heard an example where this is indeed the case.
Yes, thank you. And of course, this is this is the case this is, you know, as a trade union, this is also a core business to work on health and safety, because it's about the health and safety of workers. I just want to react to what you just said, Michael, regarding, is it a confrontation or a collaboration? I think that on health and safety, we are cooperating a lot. It's not about confrontation, because it's in the interest of the employers to have a healthy workforce, if I may say. They need workforce and healthy workforce. So it's more a collaborative way of working. And this is why we also need, once again, maybe I will be a bit meta, but this is also very important to have trade unions, because then, and Alexander just said, they are also like part of the health and safety department. This is important to have trade unions on the company level, on the sectoral level, on the national level, to help to tackle the right challenges and to find, in a very constructive ways, some response to these challenges together. And once again, I want to insist on that this is in the interest of the employers, not just in the interest of the workers, to have people who are going to work and with no risk for their health. This is very important to mention. Replying to your question, is it even possible to achieve a zero harm? I would say it must be the case. I would like once again to insist on that. This is very much important. You mentioned that this is absolutely normal to go to work without any risk. And this is not just about injuries, but also occupational disease. And for that, still a lot to do, because this is not always very direct. As an example, in France, some miners are now trying to discuss with the government about the mental charge, if I may say that in English, that the risk, the exposure risk they had during their lifetime has caused on their actual health. So they know that in the past they were exposed to asbestos. And so this means that now they are fearing to have some health problem. So this is also to be taken into consideration. Maybe regarding what needs to happen, this is also important to mention the new challenges, because we, as once again, extractive industry, mining company have done a lot to identifying the current challenges regarding health and safety, but we see more and more new challenges, and this also needs a strong anticipation. For example, now we have this problem of extreme weather across Europe. We have some flooding, but also extreme health, etc. So that could also have some problems on health and safety. Also on landfill mining, recovery of waste previously dumped, lack of risk of explosion, etc., is also to take into consideration. And as I said, this mental distress, this anxiety that are also some health problem could appear is also important to take into consideration. As a solution, once again, we strongly support the idea of involve the trade unions, because then we know that they are also the experts on this question, because they know what are the workers' needs. They must be involved in safety plan, in strategy plan, and not just about the behaviors of the workers. This is, of course, important. Alexander has explained that very well, also to not just taking care of the behaviors inside the work site, but also in their life. But this is not just about that. We also need to involve the workers in the safety plans, is the strategy, and this is what we are calling for. Maybe another thing I wanted to mention is about legislation. National legislation, European and international legislation are very much important regarding health and safety of workers. We have lots of directive proposal, ILO standard, also sometimes more international standards, such as EHESS one for extractive industries. And we see that enterprise which manage occupational health and safety are more motivated to work when there are some legal obligations. So that's also probably a way to achieve this zero harm. And as a last comment, of course, training, protection equipment, reporting, and all the enforcement of inspection are very much important. Penalties when the companies are not fulfilling their obligations, etc., must also follow this kind of legislation, because I already mentioned this NEPSI example of implementing exposure limits. We do not need just legislation. We also need enforcement measure and follow-up, if I may say.
Thank you very much, both Alexander and Sophie. I guess, Alexander, I'd be curious your take on the role of legislation in response to what Sophie said, and particularly, maybe let me be a bit more specific with my question, or what I'd like to hear from you is, I've worked in the mining industry in the past as well, and health and safety related roles. And at certain stages in that journey that you've also mentioned, health and safety played less of a role, ever less of a role, when we got ahead of sort of the curve with the safety management and the safety culture. So once we got to a sort of proactive stage, the workers were on board, the unions were on board, etc. Health and safety was, or the legislation was kind of a minimum requirement. It was actually fairly easy to get above and across that minimum requirement. I'm not sure, Alexander, do you see it this way as well, or what's your take on that actually?
Yes, our vision is that the legislation set the minimum requirement for safety. We are trying to maintain a higher level. Our legislation for mining in Bulgaria is from 1971.
Oh, okay.
It's not updated yet.
So the bar is not that high, you want to say?
Yeah.
Oh, I can say it, you don't have to say it.
All the time we are looking for best European and world standards in mining, and each year what changes they have in legislation and what are the minimum requirements for the world level. And we are trying to maintain higher level, as I said.
So that certainly then it is an issue if you have 70-year-old legislation that probably is not up to date anymore, and then along the lines of what Sophie said before,
yeah.
that legislation needs to move ahead as well.
And also in Bulgaria, for example, is we have a changes in one legislation for diesel resource exposure underground and in open pit mines. We have in this legislation set a minimum exposure limit, but nobody in Bulgaria can measure it. And we hired the laboratory from Romania, FGTB, and the analysis of the samples we've made in USA, just to see where we are. But this will be enforced in 2023 in open pits, in 2026 in underground mines. This is my meaning that it's not very easy in Bulgaria to follow the legislation because it's not up to date, and if we want to be up to date with the new legislation, there is no way to how to measure the new requirements.
That goes back to the point Sophie made, that enforcement then is relevant, obviously, as well, and being able to even enforce certain elements of legislation. Another question that I have, and to some extent it already came up, the role of automatization and digitalization. What role do you see in these two elements, these two aspects with regards to achieving zero harm? Maybe Alexander first, and then again, Sophie, your take on this one.
Okay, we are very open with digitalizations, and we are trying to implement the last technologies in our mine. For example, the last implemented technology is to take out from the underground rock breaker operator. Now he operates the rock breaker that is underground in the crusher complex on the surface. he is sitting in the office and no exposure of dust, temperature, whatever. The next step is the front loader operator to operate the remove their machines from the surface. Also, we already have implemented surveyor drones that keep out the surveyors from the hazardous area underground. I'm not fully familiar with all implemented technologies in our companies, but this is an example of some of them. The last thing, one of the drilling machines, we've changed it with drilling machine with batteries, and now we're in process to implement it in the production. That means that no diesel exhaust exposure will be with this machine on the ground.
So it allows to move people out of harm's way, basically.
Yes, correct.
The examples that you gave. Sophie, your take on the role of digitalization, automatization?
Yes, of course, probably that can help. This is also part of the evolution of industry. So, of course, we are very much already very much advanced in digitalization. And that could maybe help regarding the exposure risk of workers to different dust and temperature, etc. That is absolutely true. But we also have to take into consideration that digitalization have also new risks regarding health and safety. So we have also to tackle this new risk of digitalization regarding the health and safety of workers, because I'm talking here about some new machines, of course, but also artificial intelligence that could also sometimes cause new problems because of algorithms and also these kind of problems and mental pressure that could also be put on the workers. I do not have a very concrete example regarding that, but that would be my comments regarding digitalization. Of course, very much helpful, but also be careful about the new risk that could happen regarding that.
Good. Thank you very much. I guess. Well, is there any other points, any other comments? I don't have any more questions, so we're going to summarize our conversation, our discussion in just a second. Is there any other comments, anything else that you see as important from your point of view with regards to health and safety and achieving zero harm that we have not touched upon yet up until now? Sophie? And then Alexander.
Maybe a last comment regarding the future. You know that we are going to probably open lots of new mines in Europe if we follow the European Commission willingness, if I may say. They are going to publish a Critical Raw Materials Act in the coming months, so this will also probably lead to more domestic extraction in Europe. And for us, this is very much important that health and safety of workers are in line with all the proposal that the European Commission will give regarding that. We should continue to put these health and safety of workers at the heart of this new legislation, if there are new legislation. That's very much important, because sometimes Europe is saying that we have the best standards regarding protection of workers, but this must be still the case. And we will face new challenges. I just say that critical raw materials, sometimes we do not know exactly what will be the risk, the exposure risk to these new materials in Europe. So that's also very much important once again to anticipate, to involve all the right stakeholders, including university, research center, etc., to also identify the new risk for health and safety of workers.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Alexander, any additional points from you?
No, thank you.
Okay. Excellent. Good. So thank you very much, both Alexander and Sophie, for your contributions, for your thoughts on this subject. I guess sort of summarizing things up, we've discussed a lot of elements, moving from intrinsic risks via sort of processes, equipment risks, all the way along to safety, health and safety management, health and safety culture, collaboration between workers, union, management, and involving even families and people from outside the company as well. All of those elements will be needed and necessary in order to achieve zero harm. We talked about legislation and the role of legislation sort of as a minimum requirement, but as a bar that actually needs to move and needs to also consider then those new risks, those new elements that might be introduced through automatization, digitalization, which in itself could actually have a positive impact by moving people out of harm's way, but on the other hand might introduce new risks that we're not yet foreseeing either, so that needs to be considered going forward. And then Sophie also touched on the Critical Raw Materials Act that is being worked on in Europe, so that there might actually be more mining to happen than in Europe, and that health and safety needs to be a core part of that act and a core consideration of this act going forward as well. I hope that sums up our conversation, sums up our discussion. Sophie and Alexander, thank you very much indeed for taking the time today to discuss this very important subject with me. And dear learners, I hope that you get some new elements, new insights for you, for your personal health and safety journey as well. And looking forward to your comments and your feedback in the chat as well. Thank you very much.